Hello, my name is Dummy Sinclair and I will be the presenter today. The presentation's title is Together We Are Stronger, Utilising the Portfolio Community. This presentation was originally created for the AAEEBL conference hosted in Boston in July 2015. I will also be putting up a link to the Prezi presentation, so if you want to just access that, then you'll be able to do so in the description below this video. This presentation is about how we can utilise communities to offer each other support and solutions. It will focus primarily on user groups and will have a slight focus on Mahara, as that's where my personal background is, but hopefully the principles should be applicable to any software or indeed any pedagogies. Let's get started. So the first frame is about why stick together. So there are a few reasons why sticking together can be beneficial. So being the only person in your institution who's championing a particular piece of software can be really lonely and it can quite easily get frustrating. So by coming together with a user group, you can utilize that community and get the support you need, because there may well be other people who are the lone people within their institutions. So coming together can actually create a support network that might otherwise not exist. Another reason is that it can offer a different perspective. So sometimes we can get really kind of clouded and we can't see the wood for the trees. But by having somebody from outside your institution or outside your situation be able to look at something, then they can quite often come up with a fresh perspective and help you see that something you thought was an insurmountable problem actually isn't. As well as pooling their perspective, you can also crowdsource knowledge. So many minds make light work and all of that. And again, people may have other experiences than you and be able to put in suggestions and offer knowledge. There's also the opportunity to work together, whether this is a user group that you have within your institution. So within the faculty, various people who you may call colleagues, coming together and working together, working with students, or working with people from outside organisations or institutions. It can be really beneficial for us to come together for the greater good of education and students. Now, pool resources is one that I'm working on particularly at the moment. It's an idea I have that particularly with open source software, it can be as good as we want to make it theoretically. All you need is the knowledge or the money to pay a developer in order to code something, to develop a new plugin and make the system better. Institutions obviously might not have large pools of money to spend on developers, particularly if they haven't invested in an in-house one. So by pooling together from multiple institutions in a kind of open source educational Kickstarter, we might be able to actually get plugins that would be beneficial to everybody and get them done, rather than just talking about how systems could be made better for our own usage. So I'm hoping to come up with a framework for how that might work and present it at Mahara Hui UK 2015. Obviously, if I'm unable to do that, then I will publicise it elsewhere, possibly on my blog or my Twitter feed. So please do feel free to follow me at Dommy_Sinclair, and I'll hopefully get that out. So this is where it's going to get a little bit specific to Mahara, but it's just kind of as a gauge. So within Mahara, which is obviously only one piece of software, there's already a number of user groups that Mahara themselves or Catalyst IT are aware of. That's MacHara, the Scottish user group, the Kiwi user group, Mugsy, which is where I'm from, and if you noticed earlier, you'll see I'm wearing a Mugsy t-shirt, Oz Mahara user group, and also Mug, the user group in New York. Particularly the one in New York, I know runs some of their meetings online as well as face-to-face. So if you're unable to attend one of those physically, you may be able to attend digitally. I would get in touch with them and see whether they mind you participating if you are interested. So I'm going to talk a bit more about Mugsy, because obviously that's where my experience is, and I can talk about how we got set up as a user group and what we've learnt so far. So Mugsy stands for the Mahara User Group for Southern England. I did help come up with that name, and I'm available to come up with other acronyms if you want, just as catchy. Just drop me a tweet. So that's what that stands for. We did have a bit of a chat about whether it should be the user group for Southern England or South East England, but we decided to make it slightly broader to begin with, and we can always narrow it down should that become a requirement if it gets too large, or if people would prefer that because of travel reasons and other restrictions. The reason why we formed the user group was after the Mahara conference last year in 2014. There were a few of us who were chatting and just basically saying how wonderful the conference is and what a shame it is that we only get to meet up once a year, because so many great ideas come out of it. There's a lot of inspiration seeing what other people are doing. You know, when you get chatting, particularly in the networking periods at breaks and lunch, then a lot of other great ideas come out and solutions, and it's really helpful. And it's a shame it's only once a year. So we said, well, taking the lead from Matt Cara, who'd already set up at that stage, why not set up a user group and meet up a few more times a year? So we've had 3 meetings so far in the last year, which is quite good. I'm glad we were able to get that many in. I'm hoping to have a 4th meeting soon, but that's in progress. So we've had 3 meetings and they've all been pretty good. I've thought, not particularly heavily attended, but I wouldn't expect that with any new user group. And obviously, only having 3 meetings, we are still very much finding our feet and establishing ourselves. One of the things I think has worked particularly well about the user groups is the opportunity to display and discuss. So by this, I mean that within the user group, we have an opportunity for people to do a show and tell, to show what they've been doing and hopefully inspire other people, perhaps get some feedback on what they've been doing, or some pointers if that's what they're asking for, and also discuss, so people can bring their problems, and we can all kind of chat, and people who may have alternative experiences can offer solutions, or at least what their workaround was, which may be helpful. I've also really enjoyed that we've had a real range of people. Although there's only been about 10 people at each of the 3 user groups, it's been quite a broad range of people, from experts within Mahara to complete novices. We've had people who aren't even using Mahara yet. They're interested in getting in a portfolio system, and so this is kind of part of their fact-finding. They've decided to come to the user group to find out a bit more about what Mahara even is. So it's really good to have those different levels. It's obviously beneficial for the people who are newer to the system, because they can benefit from talking to people who know a bit more, and for the people who are more established in using the system, it's also really beneficial, because sometimes some of the more some of the stuff that you've been doing, you kind of take for granted and you're slightly on autopilot. So it can be really useful to think about, why do I do that, or how do I do that? So that can be really useful as well. We've also had a range of people from EdTech people, so learning technologists, developers, etc., to academics, and even a couple of students came along to one, which is really great, getting that range of people as well. It'd be really good to have a few more students perhaps at future meetings. So we do have a Twitter account for Mugsy, @MugsyUK. Please feel free to follow that. We will tweet about any upcoming meetings, particularly if you are in the south of England, including London. Then I recommend following that, get some updates. So hopefully at this stage you're feeling inspired, you're seeing the benefit of utilising a community, whether that's an internal community or an external community, and you're thinking, great, how do I set up a user group? Well, I'm obviously no expert, but I have some tips. So my step 1 would be find others who are interested. Obviously it's very difficult to set up a user group of 1. It doesn't have to be a lot of other people though, you literally have to find one other person who's interested. just to start with, to have someone else to help set this up with. And decide how you want the group to work. Now, it will not work very well if it's a complete dictatorship and just you dictating how it's going to work to everybody once they turn up. You probably want some flexibility, but at the same time, you want a framework for people to grip into. So it's a lot more useful to go, well, this is what I thought we could do and how I thought it would work. Maybe have a rough agenda or something like that. And then people can come in and offer feedback and go, oh no, actually, it would be really useful if we could do this, or could you give longer for this idea and a bit less time for that. So have something to work with when you go to other people. You'll probably find you get a better response. Step 2 is basically kind of about promoting and spreading the word and building up interest. So utilize any existing user groups, e.g. for the LMS or VLE, depending whether you're from America or the UK, what term you use. So by this I mean that with Mugsy, we were able to tap into Moodle user groups because a lot of people that use Moodle also use Mahara, and get some interest there. There was talk of a Mahara kind of section within the Moodle user group for London. However, we decided that there are enough people that use Mahara who don't use Moodle, and enough people who use both and want a dedicated time just for Mahara, that an entirely separate user group should be set up. So that's why we set up Mugsy as its own initiative. So that could be useful, using those existing communities. Another way you can utilize this is to post on message boards. So most systems will have some sort of message board for users to discuss issues in. So you can post on there to say you're having a meeting or you're interested in setting up a user group, who else is interested. Mailing lists as well. So in the UK, we have something called JISC, which is a kind of a funding and research group. And they have mailing lists for various different interests. And so you could tap into those. There's also Facebook groups for a lot of things, so a lot of products. There's a Mahara Facebook group, for example, so you could post on there. And Twitter is also really useful. So whether that's using specific hashtags, so hashtag portfolios, hashtag Mahara, hashtag PebblePad, hashtag Digication, whatever it happens to be that you want to set up a user group for, that might get interested people. You might also want to mention specific people that you know are involved in the systems to get their input as well and to get the word out to them. We've been very lucky with Mugsy that for every meeting we've had so far, somebody from Catalyst IT, which is the company that look after the Mahara project, they manage all the code and release all the core code, manage all the upgrades, have actually attended every one of our meetings, which is really useful because obviously it's good to have their support, and it also means that we get some inside information sometimes. So they've been really good. They're actually the ones that have come up with all the beautiful logos you saw earlier for the user groups, was Yvonne from Catalyst IT, so thank you very much to her. You might also want to advertise in relevant newsletters, again, similar to the message boards. So step 3 is obviously you want to have the meeting. So first of all, you need to find a suitable space. This could be a physical space. So with the first Mugsy meeting, this was actually hosted in a classroom space on the side of a swimming pool in Brighton. So if you came out of the swimming pool, out of the classroom, there was a corridor that then overlooked the swimming pool. It's the weirdest place I've ever had an education-based meeting, but it worked perfectly well for what we needed. There was enough space and seats for everybody. There was a projector so we could share what we were doing, and it was actually a lovely space to have the meeting in. Of course, the space doesn't have to be physical. As I mentioned before, MUG have the New York user group for Mahara, have a lot of their meetings are also hosted online. So it may be that you want to have your meetings online in Skype or Google Hangout. If you can't all get together, particularly if you're in a rural area where you're a bit more restricted on travel, or if the particular thing you want to have a user group about is something that is very niche, and so you're all displaced geographically around the world and can't get together, then why not do it online? Utilize technology. So when you actually have the meeting, something that's very important is to take notes. And step 4 will reveal why this is so important, but it's good to take notes. It doesn't necessarily have to be fully detailed minute by minute, but you do want to kind of minute the meeting so you have a record of what's happened and discuss the future of the group. So it'll work really well if everybody can feel like they're kind of involved in the group. So discussing the future obviously gives people hope that there's going to be another meeting so they can put it in their calendar. And it also, if they have some sort of say in maybe how the group will run or anything like that, you know, if you say, please suggest agenda meetings for the, items for the next meeting, then it allows people to feel a sense of ownership within the new community you're creating, which will obviously make them more invested, more likely to contribute and want to come again. So step 4, blog about the meetings. This is why it's so important to take notes, because then you can blog about the meeting, which is really useful. It means that if anybody who wasn't able to attend can then still get a sense and a benefit from the meeting. It also means that particularly with your initial meetings, people may be cautious about attending. People quite often don't like to be the first ones to do anything. I know personally from my professional experience that if there's a new system that we're trying to use, that people won't want to use it unless there's a case study. So nobody wants to use the portfolio system until there's a case study of somebody else who's used it successfully that they can then run off of. Similarly with a user group, people might want to know a bit more about it before they invest their time and come along to it. So if you've got a blog, it gives people a bit of a better idea about what happened at the last meeting and therefore what they can expect at the next and whether they think that sort of thing is going to be beneficial to them. So that could be really useful. And present at conferences about the user group or make videos about it afterwards, whichever your preference happens to be. And again, that will obviously spread the word, and hopefully you can also maybe take some of the knowledge that you've gained from the user group and spread it wider. I think that education in particular has a lot of problems with people getting very caught up in their silos, whether that's subject-specific silo of, oh, I do this subject, so I only look at this, or I'm in this department, so I only deal with people in this department, when in fact cross-department collaboration can be really beneficial. And again, obviously you don't want to get trapped in a silo of I'm in this user group and so I'm only doing this. You want to spread with the a wider community as well if you can. Share and collaborate between user groups, between people who aren't in user groups but still have something to contribute to the area that you're interested in. So always be open to sharing with the community and considering that there are always multiple communities with any situation. So a slight warning, be prepared to start small and grow. So as I mentioned, we haven't had hundreds of people turning up to our Mugsy meetings. I'd say about 10, which I think is a reasonable turnout to each meeting. So do be prepared to start small and grow. Please don't get disheartened if at your first meeting there's only a few people there. Even if there's only 2 of you, 3 of you, that's still enough people to start chatting about what you want to chat about and having ideas. It's amazing what ideas could come out of just speaking out loud, particularly if you've been the lone person supporting a system within your institution. Just having another human who's interested to talk to can be really useful in sparking ideas of, oh yeah, that might be a good way that I could promote the system, and how have you been doing? And just getting that support can be really useful. So don't worry if you're small. The likelihood is that you'll grow, and if not, it can still be beneficial. Obviously, if you have an internal user group, just your faculty or something, then it may not grow, depending what the turnout is like initially, but don't get disheartened. So my name is Dummy Sinclair. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter at Dummy_Sinclair. I've also got my email address. Slight shameless plug. I did my presentation in Prezi. Just so happens that I've written 2 books about Prezi: Instant Prezi for Education How To and Prezi Essentials. So if you are interested in learning more about Prezi, you can hop over to Amazon or other booksellers and buy those. I'd be very grateful. That's how I'm able to afford lovely dresses to wear to conferences. So feel free to do that. I'm going to zoom away from my shame now. So thank you very much for your attention and for looking at this presentation. I hope it was helpful. If you do have any questions, as I say, please feel free to tweet me at Domi_Sinclair, or alternatively tweet at MugsyUK, or follow that if you're interested in joining the Mahara user group for the south of England. Thank you. Bye.